Tonight on the Worldview Weekend Hour, Palestine. Is there any such thing as a Palestinian state? Where did Palestine come from? What many people do not know. And Hamas in America will expose their terrorist charter that clearly states what they're all about. The elimination of Israel and anyone that stands with the nation state of Israel. The Worldview Weekend Hour begins right now.
WVW-TV presents the Worldview Weekend Hour with Brannon and Howse. Whether the topic is law, science, government, economics, history, family, social issues, education, or theology, Brannon brings the issues of today into clear focus through the lens of a biblical worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Weekend Hour. And tonight we're going to continue our series, part 2, on Hamas in America. We'll look at their charter, which clearly shows us it's a terrorist state. All right, but one thing, hon, can you lean over and push start on my clock down there so I can see what time to end? Unless you guys just want to go all night. Good job. All right, so last week we finished up right here. Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928. See that on the slide there? Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928. That was a little hint to my producer. And then we're going to look at Muslim Brotherhood who founded Hamas in 1987. Then we'll look at Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas officially founded CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, in 1994. Look at this. Here is an article I found this afternoon in my research preparing for tonight. And it's written by a Japanese writer, and he wants to know this. When was there ever a Palestinian state? You know, like the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. We hear all this talk about how Hamas, CAIR, Muslim Brotherhood, whatever you want to call them, they want to eradicate Israel off the face of the earth. They want to wipe out every Jew, exterminate every Jew. They want to carry out another Holocaust. Don't forget, we saw last week, they were involved in the first Holocaust of Adolf Hitler. We'll do a refresher on that in just 1 minute. But they all claim that Israel, the Jews, are occupiers, that they have colonized and taken over land that is not theirs. Well, here's the question that many should be seeking an answer to. When has there ever been a Palestinian state? When? Here's this article from a Japanese writer, nonetheless. He says, if you're so sure that Palestine, the country, goes back through most of recorded history, I expect you'd be able to answer a few basic questions about the country of Palestine, like, how about number 1? When was it founded and by whom? Number 2, what were its borders? 3, what was its capital? 4, what were its major cities? 5, what constituted the basis of its economy? 6, what was its form of government? 7, can you name at least one Palestinian leader before Arafat? 8. What was Palestine ever recognized by a country whose existence at the time or now leaves no room for interpretation? 9. What was the language of the country of Palestine? 10. What was the prevalent religion of the country of Palestine? 11. What was the name of its currency? Choose any date in history and tell what was the approximate exchange rate of the Palestinian monetary unit against the US dollar, German mark, GB pound, Japanese yen, or Chinese yuan on that date. And then finally, number 12, since there is no such country today, what caused its demise and when did it occur? 12 very, very important questions. And he says, you're lamenting the low sinking of a once proud nation? Please tell me when exactly was that nation proud and what was it so proud of? Folks, those are excellent, excellent questions that need to be addressed, but they never are because the American people and really people of the world have been the victims in large regard of an information operation, a propaganda war. A lie. Isn't that what we just finished up? A 19 one-hour series on brainwashing, lies, re-education, brainwashing, which, by the way, quick plug, all 19 hours are now in the Situation Room at situationroom.net. under the library tab and then look for Worldview Weekend Hour. And you can watch all 19 hours on brainwashing and how it's done. 10 systematic steps for brainwashing. Well, the world has largely been the subject of brainwashing when it comes to this topic. They've been led to believe that there was a Palestinian state and thus the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and the people that work in conjunction with them, Fatah, Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, all these different organizations are just simply asking for what was rightfully theirs before it was taken from them by the Jewish people who are occupiers. Well, if that's the case, can they answer any of the 12 questions this Japanese writer puts forth? No, they can't. In fact, look at this graphic here. This is a great graphic. In the unjust Jewish occupation of Arab land. What do you got around it? All these Arab nations, all these Islamic states. Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran. I mean, it just goes on and on. And then look at that little sliver of land in yellow that has an arrow going to it, and then the Israeli flag. Yep, in the unjust Jewish occupation of Arab land. Look at all the Arab land they have, and then this little sliver of land that is that of the Jewish people. Folks, this is the reality, and this is the brainwashing that's occurred. And this is, again, why it's so important that we have programs like this, and we have people like Jimmy DeYoung and Dr. Jimmy DeYoung and Dr. Andy Woods and some of the programs that we carry at worldviewradio.com and WVW-TV.com. For these guys are, well, in many regards, they are my teachers. They're, in many regards, the ones that have taught me so much about the Jewish people, the nation state of Israel, Bible prophecy. And do you know that tonight what we're doing brings a very special blessing to each and every one of us that does what we're doing tonight? You know, Genesis 12 says, I'll bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Well, this week I went and I looked up the word bless in the dictionary. What does it mean to bless someone? You ought to do that. I love to look up the meanings of words from like the Merriam-Webster dictionary and just see the different meanings of the text or of that word, of a word, because a lot of times it gives you a definition that maybe you didn't think of. Because blessing someone can mean simply this, speaking well of them. Obviously, the opposite of a blessing is a curse. The opposite of a curse is a blessing, right? Someone called in my radio show a few months ago and said, what does it mean to bless Israel? How can I bless Israel? You know how you can do it? By simply carrying out one of the meanings of the word to bless, which means to speak well of. To speak of in terms of what is true. Expose the lie of the slander or the curse. So you want to be blessed? Defend the Jewish people. Speak well of them. And when you are refuting the lies and the slander about them, you're doing just that. You're speaking well of them. You're defending them. And guess what? A special blessing comes on those who do this. Very interesting. The book of Revelation at the very beginning says there's a special blessing to those who come to seek to understand the book of Revelation. I'm not aware of any other book in the Bible that says there's a special blessing that comes from seeking to understand that book. But there's a special blessing that comes to those who seek to understand the book of Revelation. Now, isn't that interesting? Genesis says there's a blessing to those who defend Israel, who understand Israel, who bless her, who speak well of her. And then the book of Revelation, the other book into the Bible, says there's a special blessing for those who come to understand that book or seek to understand that book. And isn't Israel mentioned an awful lot in that book of Revelation? You want to be blessed? Two ways you can do that. Speak well of the Jewish people. Speak truth about the Jewish people. Refute the lies about the Jewish people, that is, the curses being made against them. And then study that book of Revelation, which speaks about what will be in the future of the Jewish people. Look at this headline. Jerusalem Post, Netanyahu, archaeology, DNA prove Palestinians not native to land of Israel. Subtitle, there's no connection between the ancient Philistines and the modern Palestinians whose ancestors came from the Arabian Peninsula to the land of Israel thousands of years later. And Netanyahu tweeted this. Now, this is an article July 7th, 2019, so just last month. Here's what he tweeted. A new study of DNA recovered from an ancient Philistine site in the Israeli city of Ashkelon confirms what we know from the Bible, that the origin of the Philistines is in southern Europe. Here's his next tweet. The Bible mentions a place called Kaftar, which is probably modern-day Crete. There's no connection between the ancient Philistines and the modern Palestinians, whose ancestors came from the Arabian Peninsula to the land of Israel thousands of years later. But you see, my friends, how many of you have been led to believe that, well, obviously Palestine must belong to the Palestinian people. Palestine. Yeah, hey, wait a minute. The Jews are occupying. They're occupiers. They've colonized. They're usurpers. They need to leave and give the land back to the Palestinians. Well, guess what? You want to learn a little history? You know what my friend Dr. Andy Woods taught me? Palestine has nothing to do with the Palestine Liberation Organization. Palestine was the name given by a Roman emperor in around 117 AD to what we would call Israel today. He, the Roman emperor, being apparently anti-Semitic, wanting to poke a stick in the eye of the Jews, said, no, we'll call it Palestine after the Jewish enemies, the Philistines. Are you keeping up? Now, the Philistines hadn't been around, I looked and studied this, for about 600 years at this point. So he had to reach back 600 years into history. The Roman emperor, Hadrian, reached back 600 years to the enemy of the Jewish people, the Philistines. Remember David and Goliath, Goliath? Reached back 600 years and grabbed the name Palestine and name it after them, enemies of the Jewish people. Well, then along comes your Arabs, your Islamists, and they say, hey, we're Palestinians, and this area is called Palestine, give us the land. How many of you knew that prior to tonight? Now, this is a very educated audience, so probably a percentage of you, but how many of your friends know this? How many of your family know this? Does your pastor know this? If you go to a Calvinist, Reformed, Neo-Calvinist church, which I hope none of you go to a Neo-Calvinist church, but if you go to that kind of social justice church, and it doesn't have to be that kind of church, by the way, we're finding more and more independent Baptists are buying into the Neo-Calvinism. Oh yeah, one of my friends recently suspended, and by the way, he's a literal rocket scientist, literal, brilliant, former atheist, and he was suspended from teaching Sunday school in his independent Baptist church, non-Reformed, non-Calvinist Baptist church, because he dared to point out the false teaching of some of the Neo-Calvinists. And I'm like, but you don't go to a Neo-Calvinist, Calvinist Reformed church, do you? Nope. It's supposed to be a dispensational church. Their church doctrine's dispensational. They do not agree with Reformed theology or the tulip of Calvinism. Nope. But you have just been suspended as a teacher because you are refuting the false teaching, false gospel of people like John Piper, the Neo-Calvinist. Yep. So what's the point to be made? Folks, the churches are being infiltrated by the theological cult, false gospel of Neo-Calvinism. And by the way, some of the people he's trying to point out, as we'll see in this study, like John Piper, false teacher with a false gospel, John Piper, who says for final salvation, one must slay sin and pursue righteousness. Really? For final salvation? That's nothing more than Roman Catholicism repackaged for the Protestant world, and they call it Calvinism. But that is not the Reformed theology of men like Mr. Chafer, from which we have Chafer Seminary, or the Dr. Charles Ryrie Reformed. None of those guys would have taught that. So it's a neo-Calvinism. And guess what? John Piper also teaches, in addition to a works salvation, which is a false gospel, for final salvation, one must slay sin and pursue holiness. That's works. These guys don't apparently understand the difference between justification and sanctification. But John Piper also teaches that the Jews have no right to the land. Amazing. Amazing. Not only are these neo-Calvinists teaching social justice, socialism, not only are they teaching liberalism, buying into the idea of reparations, white privilege, the like, They're now aiding the Palestinian Liberation Organization, i.e. now they're helping the brainwashing of Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, by claiming the Jews have no right to the land. And here's my friend in an independent Baptist church teaching Sunday school and just simply mentions some of the false teaching of these neo-Calvinists. Boom, suspended. Not even a Calvinist Reformed church. This is a cancer. Neo-Calvinism is a cancer. And you want to know why I think God is allowing neo-Calvinism to spread with all of their anti-Semitism of replacement theology, and many of them who have see no role in God's economy and future plan for the nation state of Israel? You know why I believe this is now seeping over into other churches and church denominations? God's judgment. Now think about that for a minute. If God is using men like John Piper and the neo-Calvinists and Tim Keller and Matt Chandler and David Platt to judge America, what does that say about them? Whose team are they on? Now, I don't pronounce final judgment. That's not my job. But I can certainly look at their fruit. And I can look and see that many of them have no respect for what the Bible teaches about the Jewish people. And when you buy into replacement theology and declare the church has now replaced Israel, all the promises to Israel are now to the Jewish people, well, these guys clearly don't know how to study the Bible, so would we be shocked they don't seem to get the gospel right either? But by the way, when are they going to start sacrificing and wearing the right clothes with the right material and stoning people for adultery and keeping the Sabbath? That's interesting. They don't ever want to do any of that. But now all of a sudden, all the promises to the nation of Israel have been given to the church. I guess only the ones they find convenient for them. That's the point I'm making. This anti-Semitism has seeped into our own churches today, and people are buying the lie. Oh, Palestine, that belongs to the Palestinian people. Israel is a bunch of usurpers. They're a bunch of folks that have colonized, and they're involved in settling there. But really, the reality is they need to go, because they're occupiers of a land that doesn't belong to them. Wrong-o. The DNA, the history shows there's never been a Palestinian state, and Palestine was given that name to the Jewish region by an emperor, a Roman guy, as a way to curse the Jews, naming it after their enemies who hadn't even been on the scene for 600 years, the Philistines. And then up pops your Islamic jihadist saying, hey, we're Palestinian. And i.e., that means Palestine is ours. Wrong. Well, here's the picture of the Grand Mufti of Palestine. And by the way, do you know that some of the Bibles today, go look at your Bible maps. Dr. Andy Wood said, go check out your Bible maps. A lot of them name Israel Palestine. That should not be done. But look at this. Muslim Brotherhood, this is the Grand Mufti of Palestine at the time, meeting with Adolf Hitler. Now, he's Muslim Brotherhood, as we saw last week. He's giving the salute to the Nazi soldiers that are Muslims. He convinced thousands, tens of thousands of Bosnian Muslims and other Muslims to wear the Nazi uniform. We see him giving the Nazi salute there as he reviews his Islamic Nazi troops. We see another picture there. This is 1943. Here he is, looking with some German SS. And we eventually go, and by the way, this comes from the U.S. Holocaust Museum, so they've documented all of this. Here's some Bosnian Muslims wearing the Nazi uniform as we saw last week. Look at the little logo on their collar. See that? What is that? That is a sword and a swastika. Well, why would they want to hook up with Adolf Hitler? Because of their hatred for the Jewish people. Here's a picture of what is reported to be the Grand Mufti of Palestine, the Muslim Brotherhood. Remember, Muslim Brotherhood leader. Looking over Auschwitz in 1943. Here he is with Heinrich Himmler. And it is said that he wanted to exterminate the Jews real fast. He would show up to the concentration camps and say, speed it up, boys, let's go. Now, it's reported by many outlets, I've seen it even aired on the History Channel, that Hitler was going to let some of the Jews leave Bulgaria, Hungary, other places, and let them go wherever they wanted. Just get out. But the Grand Mufti of Palestine says, no, Hitler, don't let them leave Hungary, Bulgaria, because they'll just go over to Palestine and occupy there, take over. Let's kill them. Well, again, the idea was it wasn't their land originally, historically, biblically, and we don't want them going back there. Well, this is the history of Muslim Brotherhood. 1928, it was founded, and as we'll see tonight, then they formed their terrorist wing, Hamas, which is every week shooting rockets over into Israel from Gaza. And then from that comes CARE, which a lot of your neo-Calvinists want to get an interfaith dialogue with CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which is really a terrorist organization, Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas posing under a different name. In fact, here's Mein Kampf. It was translated into Arabic as My Jihad by the Muslim Brotherhood in the 1930s, as they united to support Hitler in the extermination of the Jewish people. Here it is. Distributed by the Palestinian Authority in 2003. But wait a minute, those of us who are conservatives, who believe in national borders, national sovereignty, who believe in the right of the Jewish people, we're the racist? Really? We're the Nazis? We're the fascists? That's what we're told. They're the ones locking arms with the fascist Islamo-Nazis that literally reprinted Mein Kampf into Arabic, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, who they all lock arms with today in America, the Democrats, the progressives, the liberals. They're literally locking arms with Nazis, with Islamo-Nazis. And yet they call us the ones that are racist. They declare that we are the ones that are the haters. Again, they often call us what indeed they are. Well, here's another headline. Muslim woman elected to U.S. Congress wrapped in the Palestinian flag. I showed you this last week, right? Here we have the Palestinian flag. But wait a minute. Where is a Palestinian state ever existed? And again, this is Tlaib, the U.S. Congresswoman from Michigan. And so now we have been infiltrated. And again, here's their map, the PLO map, as I showed you last week. Where's Israel? Oh, it doesn't exist. They have no desire for Israel to exist. In fact, did you know that Hitler gave al-Husseini a radio station by which to broadcast his Nazism to the Arab world? And here's what he declared. Muslim Brotherhood al-Husseini, who worked with Hitler. He said this: kill the Jews, burn their property, destroy their stores. But notice what he said, by the way. Kill the Jews, burn their property, destroy their stores. Have you guys ever heard of BDS? Ever heard of BDS? Boycott, divestment, sanctions. Boycott, divestment, sanctions. Don't be buying Jewish goods. Don't be investing in any Jewish companies. And then sanction them. Have them cut off from the rest of the world. BDS. Well, this is exactly what was going on in Germany with what is known as the boycotts of the Jews there, spray painting their windows with yellow stars or with J for Jude, for Jew. Or the night of the broken glass, Kristallnacht, which was really for many the beginning of the Holocaust. But this is what the Grand Mufti is calling for. Kill the Jews, burn their property, destroy their stores. And that's what they did. He went on to say, your sole hope of salvation lies in annihilating the Jews before they annihilate you. So that's what he's calling for back here. Kill the Jews, burn their property, destroy their stores, annihilate these base supporters of British imperialism. Your sole hope of salvation lies in annihilating the Jews before they annihilate you. History's repeating itself. BDS. Who's supporting it? Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood folks, people in Congress who are tied to that. We'll look at that in the series. Look at this. The SS leader was a witness for the Nuremberg prosecution. And here's the Nazi officer testified to this. Quote, the Grand Mufti has repeatedly suggested to the Nazi authorities, including Hitler, von Ribbentrop and Himmler, the extermination of the European Jewry. The Mufti was one of the initiators of the systematic extermination of European Jewry and had been a collaborator and advisor of Eichmann and Himmler in the execution of this plan. Folks, this was a Nazi officer at the Nuremberg trials. Let's not forget, al-Husseini, Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is Hamas. CARE operates in America. They're really Hamas. They're Muslim Brotherhood. They were involved in the extermination, the murder of 5 million Jews, 6 million non-Jews. He goes on to say, he was one of Eichmann's best friends and had constantly incited him to accelerate the extermination measures. I heard him say, accompanied by Eichmann, he had visited incognito the gas chambers of Auschwitz. End quote. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, declared to the Muslims, quote, you 360 million Mohammedans to whom I have had a strong inner connection since the days of my association with your Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, you who have a greater truth in the surahs of your Quran, I call upon you to pass judgment on me. End quote. Why would he want them to do that? Because they knew if they passed judgment on him, they would agree with what he was doing, exterminating and killing the Jews. In other words, they would agree with his actions. In the Hadith, here's the saying of Muhammad, he declared, quote, "The hour will not begin until you fight the Jews, until a Jew will hide behind a rock or a tree, and the rock or tree will say, 'O Muslim, O slave of Allah, here is a Jew behind me, come and kill him,'" end quote. According to the Arab Committee, quote, in virtually identical letters, the Mufti in the summer of 1944 approached Germany, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary to speed the extermination of the Jews by sending them to Poland, where the Nazi death chambers were located. So, my friends, the evidence is overwhelming that the Grand Mufti of, quote, Palestine, Muslim Brotherhood, he was one of the architects of the Holocaust. My friend Pamela Geller has said this, quote, "The Mufti successfully demanded that 400,000 Jews who are about to be deported to the Holy Land instead be sent to their deaths. That's not merely a collaborator, that's a partner with great influence and power," end quote. So, my friends, here's the question tonight. The goals of the Muslim Brotherhood today, what are they? What are the goals of the Muslim Brotherhood today? Well, we know that one of their goals is to finish what Hitler started. In 2009 on Al Jazeera television, Muslim Brotherhood leader Yusuf al-Qaradawi declared, quote, "The last punishment was carried out by Hitler. Allah willing, the next time will be at the hand of the believers," end quote. In other words, folks, they want to finish what Hitler started. Muslim Brotherhood wants to finish what Hitler started, the extermination of the Jews, annihilating the Jews. So we have learned that Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928. Then we learned that Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas in 1987, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas in 1987. Look at this, Hamas. Hamas is really an acronym, folks. It's an acronym. You see the H, the A, what it stands for, and what does it really mean? It's a militant Islamic Palestinian nationalist movement in the West Bank and Gaza Strip that is dedicated to the establishment of an independent Islamic state in historical Palestine. Founded in 1987, Hamas opposed of obviously the Jews occupying, quote, occupying that land. So Hamas is really an acronym for an Islamic movement. In introduction, the covenant of the Islamic resistance movement, here's what we read, quote, "Our struggle against Jews is very great and very serious. It needs all sincere efforts. It is a step that inevitably should be followed by other steps. The movement is but one squadron that should be supported by more and more squadrons from this vast Arab and Islamic world until the enemy is vanquished and Allah's victory is realized." This is the introduction, folks. The covenant of the Islamic resistance movement. Folks, this is Hamas, all right? This is Hamas. This is their organizational document themselves. What are they calling for? To defeat the Jews, to have all kinds of squadrons that are created by more and more squadrons until the enemy is vanquished. Now, this again is a Hamas document. Look at Article 13, by the way, the covenant of the Islamic resistance movement. This is Article 13 of Hamas. Quote, "There is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are all a waste of time and vain endeavors," end quote. Now, folks, they're not counting on the fact that there are outlets like this and others that will go through the charter of Hamas and tell you what Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928, gives birth to this terrorist wing known as Hamas in 1987, what their goal is. You think CNN is going to tell you this? You think MSNBC is going to tell you this? Yet it's there. You see, they're part of the red-green axis. They're part of that red of communism, Marxism, neo-Marxism, the red. And then there's the green of Islam and the green of the jihadi Islamic flags of those Islamic nations. They're not about to tell you. Because let me tell you something, folks. The Islamist Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, that is in America, really they're Hamas, but they're in America as CARE and Muslim Brotherhood. They would not have made the advances they have made thus far and will continue to make without the help of the cover of the neo-Marxist. And so the globalists who are using the Islamists as their junkyard dogs to create chaos, and then they will exploit the chaos and offer up all kinds of legislation to punish those who they hate. And the globalists hate the Christians. Largely they hate the Jewish people. I know some of them may be, quote, Christians in name or Jewish in name, but don't believe the Zion's protocols of Zion and all these other liberal fake documents that talk about the Jews running the world. How's that going for them, by the way, if they run the world? If they really run the world, don't you think they could have solved the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And if they run the world, why is it they always end up being the ones that are at the end of the stick, getting beat, pushed down, their land stolen, their property stolen, boycotted? BDS? So don't buy that. But the reality is that these groups all are united in their hatred of the Christian and the Jews. And any conservative that believes in absolute truth, national sovereignty, capitalism, free market system. And so the globalists, the Marxists are going to use the Islamists to create chaos. Then they will step in and offer up the solution to the chaos that they created. We've studied that a lot, haven't we? We also know that they're going to throw all kinds of names onto people and blame those people for the chaos. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're xenophobic. Well, they created all of this chaos, and then when you speak out against your nation being taken over by Sharia, Islamic law, no vetting of folks coming from terrorist nations, terrorists pouring over your borders, when you call for law and order and the rule of law and rooting out those who are breaking the law, you're called a racist. You're called a bigot. You're called Islamophobic. All of that is designed so they can put a label on you and then legislate away your civil rights and take you off of social media platforms, take you off talk radio, take you off television, and eventually prosecute you for hate crime laws for speaking truth about Islam so that you don't have any money as a capitalist to keep propagating the truth. So you see how this is all a nice little scenario created by the globalists and the Marxists to use the Islamists as junkyard dogs to create the chaos, and then out of the chaos, they offer up more government and they offer up laws to deal with who is supposedly creating the chaos, which isn't the Islamist, the jihadist. No, it's the Christian and the capitalist and the conservative and the constitutionalist speaking truth. Oh, they're the ones to blame. And the American people buy for the brainwashing operation. But do you really think that CNN or MSNBC is going to read to you the charter of Hamas as we're doing tonight? But when you read it, you find out they're not interested at all in conferences or initiatives or proposals that has a two-state solution. No, you find out they're not even interested in a two-state solution. They're only interested in one thing: the extermination of the Jewish people, to finish what Hitler started. Here's another one. Article 6 of the Hamas Charter. The Islamic Resistance Movement, which is Hamas, because remember, Hamas is an acronym. The Islamic Resistance Movement is a distinct Palestinian movement which owes its loyalty to Allah, derives from Islam its way of life, and strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. Well, by Palestine, what do they mean? Israel. Every inch. Does that sound like people that want to negotiate? That want to live in a two-state solution and have peace? No. But yet, what are we told over and over? We're told over and over that the Jews are the problem. The Jews won't compromise. The Jews are the agitators. The Jews are the occupiers. The Jews are the racists. The Jews are the ones involved in a apartheid state, using the words coming out of South Africa. But wait a minute. Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood. All these groups keep telling us they don't want the Jews to have even 1 inch of Palestine, what is really Israel. That they want to exterminate them, kill them, and finish what Hitler started. How about Article 2 of the Hamas Charter? Article 2. The Islamic resistance movement is one of the wings of Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. What? Wait a minute. What? The Islamic resistance movement, that's Hamas, is one of the wings of Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, which constitutes the largest Islamic movement in modern times. Now, when I tell you that the Muslim Brotherhood started Hamas, that is not my opinion. Article 2 of the Hamas Charter states, quote, the Islamic resistance movement is one of the wings of Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. And remember now, the Islamic resistance movement is Hamas. Hamas is an acronym. So they're admitting right there, Muslim Brotherhood started Hamas. Hamas is their terrorist wing. By the way, Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, care. They are in America today. And as we will see in future programs and have discussed in past programs, they are greatly influencing public policy. They are working on legislation to take away your Second Amendment rights with the progressives. They are working to deny you freedom of speech by using hate crime laws to prosecute people like myself and others on radio. By the way, what I'm saying tonight, you could not teach openly on radio in Canada. Did you know that? What I'm teaching tonight, what I often say on my radio show, which airs on about 40 terrestrial radio stations daily, what I say on that radio show, what I'm saying tonight on this broadcast, you could not say on radio in Canada without risk of being prosecuted. That's what these groups who are here in America, Hamas, CARE, Muslim Brotherhood, that's what they want in America with hate crime laws. And that's why anytime anything happens, they will take it out of context and try to declare that this was done by racist, bigoted, Islamophobic, redneck Christians, white nationalists. That's what they now call conservatives. Even though the ones who are the racist are the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas care crowd running around calling Jews pigs and apes and calling for their literal extermination. But somehow we're the racists. They're the ones who actually wore the Nazi uniform. The Islamic or Bosnian Muslims. The Grand Mufti is the one who, of Muslim Brotherhood, worked with Hitler and was behind the Holocaust. But see, again, most Americans don't know this history. But you see, again, what they're going to do is take advantage of every crisis and then rewrite the narrative. I mean, is that not what happened after El Paso and Dayton shooting? Immediately, this became white nationalist, even though the El Paso shooter had his manifesto that showed he was nothing more than a neo-Nazi. A green environmentalist, radical, calling for population control, basic universal income, races not mixing. He was basically a radical green neo-Nazi, if you read his manifesto. And we know the shooter in Dayton was also a progressive liberal, but the narrative right away was white nationalist. Take away their guns, take away their free speech, prosecute them when they speak because they're the source of the problem. Even though that is 100% a lie. But that's what they do. They rewrite the narrative to fit their agenda, even though the facts don't line up. And they know the American people largely are not going to go and research for themselves. And they want to shut down groups like us and others so that we can't tell the truth. Because after all, what's the saying? Tell a lie often enough and people will believe it. So it is indeed the Hamas group that is tied to Muslim Brotherhood, for it is Muslim Brotherhood that started Hamas according to their own charter. Article 2. Look at this one. Article 7 of the Hamas Charter. The Islamic resistance movement aspires to the realization of Allah's promise, no matter how long that should take. The Prophet, Allah blesses him and grant him salvation, has said, quote, the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews. When the Jew will hide behind stones and trees, the stones and trees will say, "O Muslim, O Abdullah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him," end quote. Folks, that's Article 7 of the Hamas Charter. calling for the killing of Jews. Have we started to see the killing of Jews even in America? Yes, the largest slaughter of Jews in American history took place last year in a synagogue in Pennsylvania. Then we had a Jewish lady shot and killed at her synagogue in April of 2019 in San Diego. And this is only going to increase because Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, CARE, these groups, the Marxist Islamists, are gaining steam, and they were going to go after the Jews and the Christians. Those who stand with the Jewish people, defend the Jewish people, speak well of the Jewish people, those who bless the Jewish people. And tonight what we're doing is blessing the Jewish people. You're simply sitting and watching this broadcast tonight, I believe, comes with a special blessing. You've set aside time to hear truth that you can use to refute the lies and the curses against the Jewish people. Who is it that's talking about killing the Jews? Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, CARE. Who's talking about taking over every inch of their land? Hamas, CARE, Muslim Brotherhood. Who is it that has offered up land to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Islamists, over and over? Israel. Israel. Who gave them Gaza and all the businesses and schools and hospitals and technology was there that had been built? Israel. Why? We're willing to have a solution where you can live peacefully and we can live peacefully, but that's not what Hamas wants. Does the media tell you about the several million Palestinians that live in the borders of Israel, that have full voting rights, and that move freely throughout Israel? No. Because again, that would show how reasonable the Jewish state is being. Brotherhood and Hamas officials founded CARE in 1994. So we've learned Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928 by Al-Banna. Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas in 1987, which is their terrorist wing. Not that Muslim Brotherhood haven't been terrorists. And Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas together officially founded CARE, which is Council on American Islamic Relations, in 1994. Here's a headline. Ilhan Omar. CARE formed because Muslims were targeted after some people did something on 9/11. I briefly showed you this last week. This is Congressman Ilhan Omar, the Somalian Muslim from the Minneapolis Congressional District, who is a racist. I totally believe she's a racist. She's a Jew hater. She's anti-Semite. She's an Islamist. I think she's for Sharia. She's not for our constitutional republic. She's for, by the way, BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions. She's a Jew hater, in my opinion. But she said, as the Breitbart headline notes, that the Council of American Islamic Relations formed because Muslims were targeted after some people did something on 9/11. Well, what people? On 9/11, it was Islamists, right? Saudi hijackers, Saudi Arabia hijackers. By the way, trained in Iran. Got some of their training in Iran. Didn't have their passports stamped, had some kind of symbol on their passport. It's classified to this day what that symbol was. But something was on their passport that allowed them to be trained in Iran, then move into Saudi Arabia, back to Saudi Arabia, and then out of Saudi Arabia come into America without having that as Iranian passport stamp. Where our border check would say, wait a minute, why were you in Iran with this Iranian passport stamp? No, that they had some kind of symbol that told the folks at the border there in Iran, don't stamp these passports. So they got training in Iran, the hijackers did, went over back into Saudi Arabia. From Saudi Arabia, came into America. Now, if you want to go look this up, this is a matter of federal record because a federal judge has ruled that these 9/11 families are due money from Iran in part for 9/11. As you'll see in my docu-movie Siege that'll be out this fall, I have a clip of the former CIA director, James Woolsey, discussing this, along with former CIA operations officer Claire Lopez. But most Americans have no idea that the hijackers on 9/11 had been trained in Iran. And they were Saudi, but they were trained by Iran as well. Now, of course, Iran and Saudi Arabia have now had a falling out. But reality is, Omar doesn't want to mention who carried out the 9/11 attacks. She just wants to call them some people. And that because of the backlash against the Muslims after 9/11, CARE had to be formed. Well, 9/11 happened in 2001, right? When was CARE formed? CARE was formed in 1994. So how could CARE have been formed after 9/11? If 9/11 happened in 2001, well, it didn't, because CARE was founded in 1994. So she's either stupid or lying or both. Here's a report I wish you guys should read. You get the full report at securefreedom.org, put out by my friends over at the Center for Security Policy. Securefreedom.org is the shorter URL for this whole report. Now, obviously, we're not going to go through this whole report, but I'm going to give you some highlights tonight that prove that CARE is Hamas. Council on American-Islamic Relations is Hamas. The subtitle of the report is How the Federal Government Proved. Who did? Wait a minute, who? How the federal government proved that the Council on American-Islamic Relations is a front for terrorism. And by the way, who is holding hands and playing patty cake with these terrorists? Useful idiots like James White. And that doesn't stop him from going onto church platforms and Bible conferences of well-known Bible teachers who openly know this, but yet still let him come and speak at their church and seminary, even though he's playing patty cake with Hamas-aligned terrorist groups and particularly CARE, Muslim Brotherhood, people like Yasser Qadi, who's openly stated you can take the life of the Christian and the Jew in jihad, that the Jews are not a real Semitic people. Look at their crooked noses and their blonde hair. The Holocaust never happened. That's fake. So the useful idiots within evangelicalism are making a way for CARE, that even the federal government has proved Hamas and CARE is really the same thing, and they're operating in America at all levels. Media, education, and religion, and penetrated our local police departments, sheriff departments, city councils, state legislators, and national security branches like the CIA, the FBI. This would be the equivalent of the Nazis penetrating all of those sectors during World War II here in America. Well, the report goes on to say in the introduction, in 2008, the United States Department of Justice successfully prosecuted the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development and its founders on 108 charges, including material support for terrorism, money laundering, and tax fraud. The government's theory of the case, successfully proven at trial, was that the Holy Land Foundation was established as a front group of the Palestinian Committee, a covert organization of the U.S. branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, and that its purpose in the conspiracy was to provide funds for the Palestinian terrorist organization Hamas. All right? Now, this is not according to me. This is according to the federal government. That the Palestinian Committee came together, which is Muslim Brotherhood, a U.S. branch of Muslim Brotherhood. They came together and they formed Hamas. And they formed specifically CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations here in America. So the Palestinian Committee came and formed here in America CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, to do PR work, to do their brainwashing, public relations work, and also to raise money for the terrorist organization Hamas. So CARE is here doing business as Hamas, raising money for Hamas as CARE. Now, that's not me saying it. That's the federal government in the Holy Land Foundation trial. The article goes on to say, the report from Center Security Policy goes on to say, in order to prove its case, the U.S. government successfully demonstrated first that the Muslim Brotherhood was an international organization operating across the globe, including in the United States. During the launch of the first Intifada against Israel in the early 1980s, the Muslim Brotherhood decided to establish Palestinian committees across the globe in order to provide support for its then new organization, Hamas, which was engaged in a war of terrorism against the state of Israel and its civilian population. The job of the Palestinian Committee was, in their own words, quote, to make the Palestinian cause victorious and to support it with what it needs of media, money, men, and all of that, end quote. Notice the media part. We know the money, right? Notice the media part. CARE, doing business in America, really is Hamas. We're here to raise money for their terrorism, global terrorism, but also they were here in America to get into the media, for the propaganda, the brainwashing, to tell you how evil the Jewish people are, the Jewish state, and how evil the Zionists are. That's me. That's many of you. How evil the Zionists are that stand with the nation state of Israel. Therefore, how evil are conservatives and Christians that stand with the Jewish people. And to paint us as the problem, when we've already seen the ones calling for the killing of the Jews are the Muslims, the ones calling them pigs and apes are the Muslims, the ones calling for their extermination are the Muslims, the Islamists, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, Hamas. It's in their Quran. It's in the Hadiths. But again, everything is flipped on its head. Good is called evil. Evil is called good. Look at the next part of this report. One of the key elements of the prosecution's case was audio surveillance of a meeting held over the course of 2 days at a courtyard by Marriott Hotel in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in October 1993, 1 year prior to the designation of Hamas as a terrorist organization by the Clinton administration. So even at one time, the Clinton administration knew they had to do this. Isn't that interesting? But in October of 1993, 1 year prior, the Palestinian Committee got together at a courtyard by Marriott in Philadelphia, and the FBI was there to record it. Obviously, they didn't know they were being recorded, and this audio was used in the trial of the Holy Land Foundation at the federal level to go after a lot of these people. And what they found was those of the Palestinian Committee, who are all tied back to Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, were there in October of 93 to form a new organization called CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, to be their front group to hide Muslim Brotherhood, hide Hamas, and be media and money for their global agenda. The report goes on to say the successful surveillance of the 1993 Philly meeting, as it came to be called, was vital to the U.S. government's effort to demonstrate the role of U.S.-based Muslim Brotherhood organizations in supporting Hamas. It also became a window into the operations of the Brotherhood in the United States at a time where preparations were being made for the designation of Hamas as a terrorist group, the first serious threat to the Brotherhood's operation since it began in the early 1960s. Now again, we know that Hamas was started in 87. Muslim Brotherhood was started in 1928. But it's talking about it's coming to America in the 1960s. Muslim Brotherhood coming to America. So this would have been the first threat against it since the 1960s. The article or report goes on to say, in particular, the Philly meeting stands out as the earliest record of the founding of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, as an organization both created under the auspices of the Palestinian Committee and in the context of its goal, support for Hamas. In that framework, CARE had a responsibility for providing media support and propaganda on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. The founding of CARE would represent a new era as the Brotherhood began to take its message not just to the Palestinian and Muslim communities in America, but also to the American people more broadly. CARE's founding was an important event because this new front of the Palestinian Committee would be empowered not just to decimate and propagandize on behalf of Hamas, but for the larger Muslim Brotherhood cause as a whole. As such, the proposal to create this new organization, first broached at the 1993 Philly meeting, required to receive the approval of the global Muslim Brotherhood leadership itself, according to the information obtained by the FBI. As the Palestinian Committee, including CARE, prepared to operate in a new and potentially hostile American environment where open reference to support for jihad against Israel and financial support for Hamas would no longer be legally tolerated. They would be guided by the words spoken by CARE founder Omar Hamad, who was present at the meeting. Hamad noted the importance of misleading Americans about the true nature of the Muslim Brotherhood and its support for the terror war against Israel. Quote, I believe that our problem is that we stopped working underground. We will recognize the source of any message that comes out of us. I mean, if a message is publicized, we will know, end quote. Omar Hamad told the Philly meeting participants, quote, the media person among us will recognize that you sent two messages, one to the Americans and one to the Muslims, end quote. Echoes of Omar Hamad's words remain visible today. CARE, the last remaining organization of the original Palestinian Committee, continues to operate in much the same manner as it was originally envisioned in Philadelphia, portraying itself as a Muslim civil rights group. CARE continues to enjoy lobbying access to state and federal legislators, high-level meetings with members of the executive branch, and the support and endorsement of uncurious media outlets. CARE cloaks itself in claims of moderation while promoting the same Islamic supremacist agenda of encouraging American Muslims to support jihad, both against Israel and elsewhere. While the group publicly promotes a toned-down version of Islamic rhetoric for the American public as a whole, its own history belies these claims of moderation. A number of CARE's employees and board members have been indicted, convicted, and deported for terrorism or material support for terrorism, as noted by the Louisiana State House of Representatives when it voted to support a prohibition against state officials, quote, interacting with the group, end quote. So, my friends, we have proven without a doubt, by just simply looking at the information that comes from the FBI back in the early 90s, that when the Palestinian Committee met in October of 93 at a Courtyard Marriott in Philadelphia, Muslim Brotherhood Hamas was there to form CARE, to be a front group, to raise money and media attention for their cause, and to send two messages. One, propaganda to the American people. One, as a cloaked message to the Muslim people. No, Omar, CARE was not founded after 9/11 because Muslims were being harassed, because some people did some things. CARE was founded in 1994. It is here among us, it has penetrated us, and CARE is Hamas, a terrorist organization, and they've penetrated every level of local, state, and federal government and national security. And what we're doing tonight, they don't like. But don't tell James White what I just told you, because that probably would, he's educated beyond his intelligence to understand when he praises Yasser Qadi as having a kindred spirit with him, when he wants Yasser Qadi to make a video to teach the church the true face of Islam, when he's made Yasser Qadi his mentor in part on Islam, apparently he doesn't realize Yasser Qadi is Muslim Brotherhood, is a Sharia scholar. This is Hamas. This is Muslim Brotherhood. This is CARE. He doesn't understand that he's not only become a spiritual threat to the church, I believe he's become a national security threat by giving credibility to people like Yasser Qadi, i.e. CARE, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas. You want to be blessed? Take the information we've given you tonight, spread it. Because being a blessing to the Jewish people means speaking well of them. One way to speak well of people is to refute the lies told about them. And when we speak what we have learned tonight, we'll be refuting those lies and blessing the Jewish people. And guess what will come to you in your life, in your family? A blessing. We'll pick it up next week, part 3, Lord willing. And if you appreciate this broadcast, remember there are two ways to support us. One is by a tax-deductible contribution at WVW-Foundation.com, WVW-Foundation.com. You can also send a check. Our mailing address is on the website, or by joining our Situation Room, where we now have over 1,000 TV shows like this on demand and conference DVDs and all 6 hours of our docu-movie Sabotage at situationroom.net. Why would you not want to join? All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to my wife for producing tonight's broadcast. And Lord willing, we'll talk to you next week, live, 8 p.m. Central Time, Hamas in America, Part 3. Till then, I'm Brannon Howse. Thanks for watching. Take care.